Hey, this is Ken here. Welcome to another Starfield video. This is going to be my review of the Starfield Shattered Space DLC. And I have recently completed the entire DLC, or at least most of it, as much as I think I can find at this point in time. I have a total of 24 hours in the DLC at this point. I think about 17 of that is probably in live streams. 17, 18 hours of that are in live streams that are online on my channel right now that you can go see. And another 6 hours or more are in time that I spent off the live stream where I was doing some things that probably weren't as exciting or interesting for the purpose of showing the game. Mainly exploring and pursuing some of the achievements where you had to find 50 places, making some grenades, things like that. So I think, one of the things I want to do in this video is not only cover what I found within the DLC, but also give my thoughts on the DLC. I realize it's been about a week since the DLC dropped. Tomorrow will be 1 week to the day that the DLC drops, so there's been some time to settle. There's been a lot of things that have been said out there about the DLC, but since you can go back and you can watch exactly how I've played it, you can see how fast I played it or how slow I played it. I don't think I rushed through it. I also don't think I stopped and really 100%ed it. I didn't, loot every box and pick every lock, that kind of thing. However, what I will say is that I did enjoy it. The questions that came through in the live stream were pretty straightforward, some of which were along the way, just how are you enjoying it so far? And that's worth, certainly asking. I think there are probably there are people out there who haven't either purchased it or they already are entitled to it, they own it, and they just haven't installed it or done anything with it so far. And they're still deciding whether they're going to get involved in it. So this is, largely for those people's benefit, as well as for the benefit of anybody who's played it and who just wants to kind of talk about the game and hear about the game as well. So, certainly I enjoyed the DLC. I think it, I'm not going to get into all the issues of exactly whether you should buy it. I'll talk about that at the end, and I'm not going to get into the negative stuff that I've seen, although I might touch on that at the end of the video as well. I certainly feel like I got my money's worth out of it. It is competitively priced with other DLCs. As I've said, I got 24 hours plus out of it. On a single player is what I got out of it. If I go through this, and I've already started a couple of other players, a level 152 New Game Plus character that can come back through, and I have a level 17 character that's currently working through the Oracle, and that is considerably more challenging already. And so there's a slightly different gameplay element there when you're level 17 trying to fight things that are roughly twice your level, and that's a lot of fun too. So I think it's been fun. No regrets on my part. I was also asked what's the most challenging elements of the game, and we'll talk about some of those as I go along. Essentially where I died, where I got close to dying, what I thought was hard to fight, and then will I play it again? And I think I've already hinted at that as well, because I've already got a couple characters I'm starting to play through with. Now, this isn't going to be completely spoiler-free. I'm not going to describe how to do anything as I go through this. However, I will talk about some of the settings in the environment because, in any good story, the environment and the location is a character in the story as well. So the DLC started off just taking off from my own planet, and when I went into space, the first thing I noticed was a new space station called the Oracle, and if you've already tried this, you've seen that. I think the puzzles that are in there are pretty straightforward. There were key card puzzles, maybe some battery puzzles, I don't remember. Those were consistent throughout the game. That's normal within Starfield. They did introduce right away a new mechanic to combat, and it made combat very different right off the bat, and they told us about this in advance, so this isn't really a spoiler, in that some of the things you're going to fight are going to have the ability to phase in and out and appear right next to you. So you can't always set up at a distance, and if your combat approach in the past has been very much front towards enemy, being able to flank whatever you're fighting, that's not always going to be the case in the Shattered Space DLC, which is absolutely fine. It was actually enjoyable on many levels. Now, the second piece of it is, just go through that, explore, take your time, enjoy it, loot things. I already started to find new outfits. I think, I might have one of those outfits on me right now. We'll look at the copper Varoon suit with a scarf. I think I found this one almost immediately while playing that. We'll switch over to this. So these showed up in a couple of different variations, and we started to see armor pieces that were dropping as well. And that's worth mentioning as we get to the city of Dazra on the moon of Varunkai in the system of Kavnyk. I'm going to go ahead and jump out here to a base I built just to show you this. We are seeing already sets of armor that are dropping, and it may not be obvious as you're doing it, but it looks to me like there are possibly 4 different sets of armor that are dropping, and I don't have a full set of all of them. but I will show you the ones that I have. There's a base set of Varun armor, which I don't think is that different than the Varun armor we've seen before. I'd have to go back and look at some old videos to compare it. But there's a base set of Varun armor. There is a Varun assault armor set, spacesuit, pack, and helmet. And then there's a heavy assault set as well. And then finally, there is a miner set. It's like a Varun miner set of armor. And I really don't have many of those. They've got an interesting kind of green tint to them. You can see the pack here on this character and the helmet, but I don't have the suit. I would have to probably take that off of a miner somewhere. And the heavy assault armor, I believe, and I have to wear this out at night, might have a little bit of an orange glow to it. I don't have a full set of that. And some of the other pieces are here as well. And then the second variation, and I've seen this variation on at least 3 of these, is a Zealot version of the same. And you can see that on 2 of these pieces of armor over here, they have what looks like white paint that's scuffed off or something to that effect. So they're pretty nice. And, you know, I think you could build a pretty good suit. I've already started to see superior pieces start to drop, and I'm in this level 68 right now. Started off at 55, and I'm at level 68 at this point in time. And then we've also seen a variety of weapons. This is actually, we'll talk about this one a little bit, the Fang's rifle, the Varun Starstorm, the Penumbra, which is a rifle with a very specific type of ammunition. It's a little difficult to get, 20 millimeter. And then this weapon is a special weapon that dropped after finishing the main quest. It was called the Speaker something. I don't remember what it's called, but for some reason there's a small bug. I put it in a box, and now it's called the Chilling Assassin's Refined Varun Starlash. Although this was a custom unique weapon with its own name, this is one that came out of the game as well. So there are a variety of weapons and armor that drop in the game. There are quite a few apparel items as well. This is a caped House Vethal suit that, you know, it's got kind of a nice little half cape on the back. It's got gloves, and I think I have a Varun version of that same suit. So a slightly different style. This one has a scarf. I have a version that has a cape as well, and different versions of that. And then we have a House Dulkef suit, which is kind of nice, and a variety of lab outfits, and those have different colors as well. So far, you know, immediately obvious things that are dropping pretty regularly are apparel and armor and weapons that are specific to the Starfield Shattered Space DLC itself. And, you know, and some of these are particle weapons. I'm a little surprised that some of them were laser weapons, because I hadn't anticipated so many laser weapons. So the DLC itself takes place, of course, in the Oracle Space Station. I mentioned that. It takes place in the city of Dazra and the immediate surroundings of the city of Dazra. And I'm going to show you that on the map real quickly if you haven't seen this at this point in time. Now, I am actually outside of the city. I am down south. And I'm going to do a quick jump up to the chunks because that's close. I could just go to the map and go right back to Dazra and show you the map there too. But once you have mapped out the area, you can fast travel to all these places. And what I've noticed so far is there are 2 highly dense locations on Varun Kai on that particular moon. And so this location is the core city inside, and then most of the DLC takes place around the outside. And I spent a bunch of time, and this is what I did off camera, was I spent a bunch of time going out around the outside edge of the map. I even went to the barrier where it pops up and tells you can't go any farther. I went all the way around to the edges of it, and there are points of interest in all those locations. And all those points of interest, for the most part, they're not all unique, right? So there's some repetitions. I saw variation on the locations, so that if you went to a Varun camp, it was labeled Varun camp in one place, and then you went to another one that was a Varun camp, it would be labeled, or it would be designed differently, and the layout would be different. If you see a crash site, like a crashed ship, those are different as well. And each time I arrive at them, and I don't even think I have to do a long sleep or a long save off, I just kind of save and restore. If I go back to those, they can be repopulated with enemies, although some time has to pass. And the enemies change, so it's not like if I go to a particular POI, it will always be Varun Zealots. Sometimes it will be the Vortex Horrors. Sometimes it will be the Vortex Phantoms, which are humans that have been converted into phantoms or Vortex creatures as well. And that brings me to the question that was asked in the live streams, which is what were the most challenging parts of the game itself. And I think certainly right off the bat, when you first face the Vortex Phantoms on the Oracle and they start to phase in and out and they can appear right next to you, that was definitely a challenge. I'm not sure, like my level 17 character, they hit like a truck. My level 55 character with the gameplay options turned on, combat turned up a little bit, things like that, is probably closer to what it's like to be a level 35 or 40 character playing without any gameplay options, just kind of vanilla. And so those were a little challenging, but they weren't terrible. The Vortex also spawns these large spidery creatures, some small ones and some large ones. Those are interesting, especially early on. But the one that really got my attention was the Redeemed. And this is not a Vortex creature, but it is a variation on the Varun Zealots, and it is, perhaps augmented with technology and maybe some genetic engineering and who knows what else. But they are a very aggressive melee attacker, and we've seen them in the game trailers that came out early on. So I think my first death was to one of the Redeemed, and in my defense, I was trying to get a melee weapon out. I didn't have a really great one. I was trying to fight him using melee, and I'm not really that good at it, and he took me out pretty quickly. That's in one of the live streams. After that, I adopted a strategy, and if you have some Starborn powers and a decent gun on you, you can manage one of them without any problem. It takes a little bit of effort, and if you have more than one of them at a time, which you can find if you're going around to the points of interest. I have been to places where there have been 3 or 4 redeemed at the same site. You just have to keep hunting for them. But if you get a group of them, they can be a little more interesting. So anyway, the game takes place for the most part around this city. I will note, if I back out to the map, that when I went to the mission boards eventually, and I didn't do that early on, when I went to the mission boards eventually, I was also taken out to another location, which was just marked as a cave on the planet. Now, the cave itself hasn't had anything terribly interesting in it so far. However, the site around the cave has almost the same level of dense location packing as it does around the city. So it's not a full city, but I spent easily an hour just wandering around that area, going from POI to POI and farming materials and other items. And one of the things I got at that location, and I'm not going to go into the details on how I got it, was a set of armor that is unique to the game. And I'm going to turn this on so I can see it in this location. And this is an armor that's related to a quest related to the Tomb of the Fang. And I'm going to bring this up for a couple of reasons. One is, for all the POIs that are on the map, some of them you go into the city and you'll find a quest that will lead you to the POI, to the point of interest. And those are great. I kind of wish, if I wasn't doing a live stream with it and focusing on the main quest, I might have interwoven some of those a little more into my gameplay. So do something for the main quest, do some quests that are side quests within the city, and they will lead you around the outside area and take you to different places. And if in the course of playing the game, you visit a site and then visit sites that are around it, you're going to discover other things. Some of the points of interest that are out there, I've not discovered a quest that brings me to them, but when I get there and I explore them, I will find another quest. And the armor here came from that quest. And if you go online and you search for this, and I might have a video on this a little later as well, there are ways to get this armor that involve some dubious ethical decisions. I found a way to get this armor without doing anything really wrong, and in a way that Andreja didn't have any concerns with, etc., etc. And so I managed to get this set of armor and the weapon that went along with it through a rather benign approach. And it's called, let's see, it's the holstered, calibrated Fang spacesuit, and then the Fang's balanced pack, and then the helmet as well. And the gun is, I think, a version of the Long Fang, and I actually have a better version of that gun at this point in time. But it's a nice looking suit. It is a variation on what I think is the heavy assault suit, but it is unique to the game, and you have to go through a very specific process to get it. So, I guess one of the things I would point out at this point in time is that, I'm going to go out to my base again, I think I might already be there, is that there are armor, weapons, apparel that seem to be dropping all over the place. And you have to look around, and you're going to have to hunt for them, and you're going to have to piece together your own elements, and there's some stuff that's custom as well. Now, one of the other things that happens throughout the game, and this is worth keeping in mind because in this game, your decisions do have an impact on how the game progresses and what happens. And I don't know if he's here. He is here. This is Tane Salavia. Tane Salavia? And you're going to run into him in the game at some point in time. I'm not going to go into the details.
Your shadow, your tail.
That's the adoring fan. I forgot he's out here. Anyway, we'll leave him out. I've got him assigned to this place because he's a companion. He's a follower. And if you follow my channel, I have a video out there of the, I don't know if it's 28, 30 something. There's a lot of followers and companions in the game that you can use, even if you're not going to be using the companions that come with Constellation. So if you want a follower or companion that you can romance and lock in as a lifelong friend or a partner, romantic partner in the game, there's really only a handful of those in the game, and that hasn't changed. However, as you've seen on my earlier playthroughs, especially when you play in an alternate universe, there are a lot of other companions and crew members that have distinct names. There's another one over here that we picked up in a previous quest. But they have a distinct name, personality, and you can bring them with you, and they've got dialogue that goes along with them. So not as rich and detailed as the ones that you can get from Constellation, but that's to be expected. If you're looking for a different experience, you can build an entire crew out of people who do not come from Constellation, and quite frankly, I enjoy that. I have had a lot of fun doing exactly that in the game. And so he's one of them, and the only way he's going to be available, because you can kill him along the way. There's Andrasia in one of the newer outfits. Let's see if I can find this other companion. You can kill him along the way, but you're going to have to make the right decisions. You're going to have to think about the quests you're doing. Okay, and this is another companion.
I worry about Dazra's
This is Sahima
policy of
Kavnyk,
isolation.
and from the
As
house
much as we try
Kavnyk.
to candy over the
And
problems,
she's a companion as well. You can
still see
recruit
the
her
trouble
to be on
underneath.
your ship or to work on your bases or to generally just follow you around and do things. And she has a different set of skills as well. She's in the same situation. You'll go down a quest line and they'll tell you, here's a way to do this that could end her life. And it's up to you to decide whether you want to do that or you want to try to find another way to do that. And at the end of it, there are 2 companions you can get in the game. So at this point in time, we've got weapons, armor, apparel, we've got companions. I will note, let me see if I can pull this up right here. This is worth noting as well. I have to leave the ship in order to show you the build. At the end of the main quest, you do get a couple of build items that you can use for your bases. There's not a lot, and I'm not that concerned that there weren't a lot. This is kind of like a couple of what I would consider to be nomadic, let's say, Varun Kai specific habs that you can get for your use. Now I am using a mod here, Star UI for building, and if I go to structures and I look at Varun habs, there's a small hab and a flat small hab. And they are very similar, as far as I'm concerned, to the science small hab and then the flat small hab. They're almost identical. They have a different color scheme. I haven't determined that there is any substantive difference between what you can do with them. And then the last piece I've noticed is in the hallway section, we have a Varun hallway, which has a slightly different look, but quite frankly, it doesn't look that different than, I think, the military. It is a different color of the military one as far as I'm concerned. Now, I don't, if you're using hallways a lot, that might make a difference, but they've given us 3 habs that you can use for the purpose of building your own bases. I think this hab that I'm walking into, flat small, now this is just the small. You can see the walls are angled in, and then this one is the flat small Varun, and it frankly just looks like the science one except a different color scheme. It's got walls that are a little more, I would say, straight up and down vertical. There were no changes or additional ship habs, although I'm not surprised by that. It did appear throughout the base game that everyone buys from the same ship vendors, and frankly, from my perspective, that's not an unusual situation given the nature of humanity and technology. Even if we look at the modern world today, there are really only so many companies on a planet of 8 billion people that are capable of producing commercial airliners. It is literally the pinnacle of our technological ability at this point in time. The idea that somehow the Varun would have created their own spaceships or had a lot of significant variations on spaceships is kind of an odd expectation in my view. It doesn't make sense from a technological perspective as far as I'm concerned. So we have those. Overall, I'm also going to add this, and we'll go ahead and we'll jump back over to Dazra as well. The art, the music, the color schemes are beautiful in the game as far as I'm concerned. This place, this city, the planet looks great during the day. It looks great at night. It is very colorful. There's a lot of interesting use of flame and metal. And, neon is very colorful too, but neon comes across as a little dirty and trashy, and that's appropriate for neon. It's almost like I hate to say it's like a Las Vegas, but it's meant to look that way. It has its problems. It's crime and the seedier side of capitalism, if you want to call that the problem, right? But Varun definitely looks like it's a little alien and it's a different place, and they have their own style and color and architecture. I think this is probably an appropriate point to also talk about the writing in the game. And I look at writing in video games on a spectrum, right? If you really want good writing within culture or human culture just in general, the best writing you're going to find is in books. It's literally writing. If you can sit down and spend hours reading words, you can get a very rich and complex interwoven story, right? And we've seen that in the adaptations of books into movies, into series and things like that is another variation of where good writing can be adapted and made to fit the medium. As we move down the path, we get to video games, which are primarily an interactive medium where there is writing and there are stories and story arcs, and they are interwoven with each other. But it's never going to be the same level as, let's say Shakespeare. They do, however, in this game rely very heavily on what I would consider to be common human experiences, if that's the best way to describe it. I'm not sure. The main story, I don't have any complaints with. The story of Anasko Varun and what happened essentially over here across this distance. If we're looking at this, ridiculous explosion and this crater that's in front of us, the main story has its own writing associated with it, and I think it fits Shattered Space. It fits everything that they had explained to us up front, and I don't have any complaints about that. I noticed right off the bat as I'm doing the side quests, what we have are human interest stories. Without going into too many details or spoiling it, there are people who have lost someone and you help them resolve that. There are people who are operating in this, this absurd post-apocalyptic environment who are suffering from very human issues like, addiction and they're going through these kind of I won't call it retribution, but these reconciliation cycles, right? So they're going through that path, and you get to be a part of that. And then there are some stories that are very, very, very human as well, about individuals that you might know in your life. And I think Bethesda does a nice job of that, right? So there are other games out there where you can play, and and I especially played these when I was younger. They are hard-charging military hero stories, etc., and they're a lot of fun and a blast to play. This game is full of human stories. This game is full of stories that over the course of someone's entire lifetime you may run into, because we all at some level, unfortunately, run into tragedy in our lives and difficulties, and so some of that is in here. And I'm grateful that very little of it, in my opinion, came across as stories that were meant to try to shape us into something or change our opinions. They were just common human stories that I would find in literature, that I would find in other stories elsewhere. So I consider the writing for this to be pretty good. And as they interwove those, some of those are in the main quest, some are in side quests, and some of them are just what I would consider to be flavor, right? So you're in the environment and you're going to see something unusual. There's a group of kids in the city that are doing some things that kids do, and perfectly innocent and fun, and you can participate with that. And if you follow along, and just like in the base game, if you go back to them more than once, or if you go back to them after you've already done quote unquote the activity or the quest with them, something else happens. And so there's room in the game to do the quest, to go back and follow up with somebody and go through the process. So that's all good. Now I am going to put some of the negatives in here from my perspective. I ran into some bugs. I absolutely ran into bugs in the game, and I wouldn't expect that on your platform, assuming you get it up and running, that's not something that can happen to you as well. One of the things that happened to me right off the bat on the close-in map, when I had some quests, at times there's a blue marker and it wasn't locked in on the map. It would be stuck in the center of my screen, and if I moved the map around, the blue marker would stay right where it was. So it was effectively, I don't want to say it was useless in telling me where I was probably going to go. I would have to close the map and come back in and have it reset in its location, but I didn't trust it as much. So there was a problem with the marker on the map. I also noticed that, we'll just go back out here and leave this as we're standing here looking at the city. I also noticed that during my time at my base, when I landed my ship on the large landing pad, there were times where the buggy would get caught in the railing and be stuck, and I couldn't drive away in it. That's probably a bug. It's probably not something they intend. There is a quest in the game where you are to deliver some items to people. It's a really nice quest for moving around the map and discovering points of interest. However, it completed after I delivered the second item, and I was left with one of the items in my inventory. And I believe that is a bug. I think people have identified that as a bug, and if you do the quest in a certain order, and not to make it a spoiler, but if you leave the guy at the observation temple to be last, and you do the other two first, I believe you can complete the quest with all three of them delivered. I don't think there's a long-term impact, but again, that's a kind of bug that exists in it. I also noticed one character, Oharim, I think is his name. I have to look him up on the map. But he has a little base, a little location down here. We'll find him here. Orahim's shack. When I went down to do that quest and talk to him, which was a fun quest, it took me to a couple locations. There was some nice combat. It was very enjoyable. But when I went down to talk to him, as I was talking to him, he repeated some things, like the quest dialogue would trigger. So I found some issues with quest dialogue that was repeating itself and showing up in different cases. And then the biggest bug I found in it worked out in my favor, and it is a bit of a spoiler, but I'm going to talk about it right now, and it has to do with the armor that I have on me. In that, as I found the armor, as I said, I didn't have to make a morally or ethically dubious decision about how to get the armor. I did find the armor. However, when I went back to talk to the other NPCs related to that character, specifically her father, the dialogue was set up such that I had to lie. It said, even though I could accurately represent how I came upon the armor, and I hadn't done anything wrong, and there weren't any problems as far as like reputation with Andrasia as my companion. So there's something going on in that quest line, and the individual that was involved in me getting the armor was present in the game and shouldn't have been present in the game. So they have some things to work on. All of those are minor issues as far as I'm concerned, and none of those are significant bugs that affected my enjoyment of the game. I didn't have any problems. I had minor problems getting the game going up front, but once it was running, it was fine. I didn't have any issues that were game breaking, nothing that stopped me from progressing. I was able to play through the entire main quest, finish it completely, make all the decisions I needed to make, and see all the content. I will also note that in my preparation video, the one that I did that said, that gave various recommendations for how to prepare for Shattered Space, I'm going to give myself maybe an 80% on that. The Astras were pointless. There was no point. I can't find anybody here that uses Astras. Those might be related just to the Trackers Alliance for right now and maybe forever. Who knows? So there's no need for the Astras. I think from a armor and weapons perspective, I feel comfortable that loading up on particle weapons was good, and the ammunition associated with particle weapons was fine. Heavy fuse, light fuse as well. The 3KB stuff turned out to be great. Having demolitions and heavy skill for the extra bonus. I ended up using a demolition, or let's say an explosive weapon, quite a bit at one point in time, so that was useful for me. The one thing I missed on a skill perspective that I really could have put more points in or done something with up front were lasers. I had no idea we were going to get so many really good laser weapons as we played through this. So I would put points in lasers. Gymnastics was, I think, great for the purpose of getting through the Oracle station in 0G, and also as we're here, these blue globes, if you haven't gone through this yet, those are all 0G environments, so those are kind of fun. So having some stability and able to fight in those is pretty useful. There were places in this area where I had to fight while inside these 0G bubbles, and there was, loot to be had, and there was reason to be there. So overall, I will definitely play this again. I already have I have 2 characters I'm bringing through, one at level 17. Like I said, he's currently in the Oracle station. He's part of the way through, enjoying that. The enemies hit like a truck. It takes me more time to get through them, and I can't wait to get that character into Dazra the city and see what I can do with that. Now, I don't think he's going to be ready to go through the entire quest line at that point in time, and quite frankly, some of those things would be almost impossible, I bet. But we can come and go from the planet, and he can continue to level. By level 152, the reports I've gotten back on my other videos and the live streams are that people are bringing in high-level characters, 100, 200, etc., and the game is scaling, and they're getting hit pretty hard, and it's fun, and they're enjoying it. So that's one of those things I had some concerns about up front, which is, if you have a high-level character, is it going to scale properly? Can you play the game and enjoy it? And from what we've seen, that's pretty good. And I took a character, my 150, through the Oracle very quickly just to get in here and take a look at some other things, and I may play him on another live stream. That's Kavnyk. He's a New Game Plus level 5. I think he's been through 5 unities at this point in time, so he's fairly high level, good set of skills. No prep for this, but I could bring him in here very easily, ignore the main quest line for the most part, and just wander around and do nothing but the side quests and exploration and see how that goes. I think at the end of the day, I might do a separate video on some of the negative things I've seen written about this. I will note, just because I think it's worth saying right now, I looked at Steam. All of the negative reviews I saw on Steam, there's a very small number of them, just as of a day or so ago. There were like 1,400, and I think there are 14 million verified players of the game, according to Todd Howard. So Todd Howard in an interview said there were 14 million players with about 40 hours on average. Because he works for Bethesda, which is part of Microsoft, which is publicly traded, there are some regulatory and legal ramifications if he's not telling the truth. So I do take him at his word on that. Those numbers are probably accurate. On Steam, I saw just a handful, a tiny, insignificant, 1/100th of a percentage of people who might own the game were on there making negative reviews. But if you filter by the number of hours played, none of them had even played the game, so not even an hour. So unless something's broken on Steam, there's some negative reviews on Steam that are from people who haven't even played the game, and I don't put a lot of attention into those. I think there's some other issues around the game where there's some opportunistic stuff that's going on, which I don't blame people for. It's easy to farm negative content on the internet. It's unfortunate, but there are people out there that put out a video and they literally turn around with $1,000 in their pocket after stirring everybody up. I try not to get involved in that. If you like Starfield and you enjoy the game so far, I think Shattered Space is going to be an absolute blast. There's a tremendous amount of replayability. The cost of this DLC was included when I bought Premium on the PC. I also bought it on the Xbox, so I can play it there as well. I think it's around $30, something to that effect. If I look back at Far Harbor released years ago at about $25. If you inflation adjust that forward, that's a $32 DLC today. And I think Far Harbor had about the same or actually less playable content. So I think this is easily 20 to 25 hours if you're not rushing through and trying to beat the game or roll the credits very fast. There's no problem getting a significant amount of time out of this. And if you happen to play it 2 or 3 times or bring more characters through, it's a bargain. I think Phantom Liberty was a $30 DLC. And if you go look, I like to look at sites like How Long to Beat, because they will give you, after a while, like the How Long to Beat data that's on Starfield Shattered Space is new and probably a little volatile, right? So like you'll have some reports that are people that are just putting junk in there. But over time, unless people are abusing the system, you'll start to get a nice average, and you'll see that, you know, games even like Phantom Liberty, you know, are 25 hours of playtime or 30 hours or something to that effect. So these are all fairly consistent. I'm not worried about any of this. There's no piece of it in my mind that says to me that somehow we didn't get value for what we paid for this. And we also happen to know it is absolutely standard business practice for Bethesda that we're going to go through so many Steam seasonal and discount cycles on this that anybody who wants to play it, base game, DLC included, is going to be able to pick it up at a nice price at some point in time. And, you know, given the fact that they have been very diligent about dropping updates, bug fixes, etc., as long as we as players, when we see a problem, a legitimate problem, go back to the Discord, put those in, give them some feedback, those things seem to be getting addressed on a regular basis. Bugs happen in software, there's no way around that. So I'm convinced, I'm confident that this will all continue to just get cleaner, and, you know, even these minor issues will be resolved over time. They may or may not, you know, make a big deal out of it. They might drop some of these fixes out here, you know, just quietly before any of us are really even complaining too much about them. I still think that there's some content that we were looking for. Let's say a variation on the Rev 8 buggy, which I highly recommend for this game. It makes it a lot of difference. But I think that there's some content like that, you know, we still might see in the next couple of months. And, you know, we'll be able to look forward to the next one. So thank you for watching all the way to the end. I hope you have had a chance to play this. It's been a lot of fun for me to do it on the stream and show you. You can go back and see any of the content that I've played on the YouTube channel. Feel free to share, subscribe, and like there, and comment and tell me how you made different decisions. Those are really cool discussions we're having there. You can join the Discord as well. And until next time, this is Kavnyk, and I'm out of here.